Philip is a small diesel box cab who shunts at the big station. He made his debut in season 19, having several episodes focused on him. He has a very eager nature and lots of excitement, which the other engines have little tolerance for and find his bragging hard to accept.
We really must find that little diesel another shed to sleep in.
Although he can be quite irritating, there's a bigger purpose to Philip than meets the eye. Today, we'll be exploring how Philip is one of the most important characters in Thomas the Tank Engine.
Oh, hello there. My name's Philip. I'm a diesel box cab.
So, what makes Philip so meaningful then? He's just one of the many new faces to appear in the series, seemingly designed to shift more toys into the shelves. Well, what if I told you that Philip actually parallels the character of Thomas? Philip was introduced in 2015, the year of the 70th anniversary for the Thomas the Tank Engine franchise. The year gave us 1 season and 2 movies, all having a big purpose for the legacy of the show and its characters, with Philip having a very important role in that. The first ever introduction of Philip was in the episode The Little Engine Who Raced Ahead. Philip meets Percy and Thomas in the yard, mirroring how Edward and James met Thomas.
Hello there. My name's Philip. I'm a diesel box cab.
Hello, Philip. I'm Thomas, and my friend is called Percy.
I'm Edward, by the way. And I'm James.
This emphasizes how the 2 little engines are now the experienced ones. Next, we witness Philip interacting with Gordon setting the standard for how Philip should treat him, which is similar to how he acted with Thomas. Gordon looking down on the smaller engine, provoking them to strive to prove themselves.
I won't.
You be sure that you don't. I pull the express and I travel very fast. Oh well, if you stick around long enough, you might be lucky enough to see me pulling the express. That will be a fine sight for you.
Later in the episode, Philip proceeds to run onto Knapford Junction, Thomas warning him to stop, echoing what Edward did to Thomas when Thomas first arrived.
Philip, stop! Your signal is red!
Thomas!
It's a really useful engine.
Thomas then moved on to caution Philip about Gordon, demonstrating the difference between Thomas's ability to now manage the situation compared to when he was new himself. Philip then, shortly after, almost brought about an accident, the Fat Controller admonishing Philip to follow the rules and act as expected, just like he'd done with Thomas in the past, as the Fat Controller deems them to have potential.
Now, Philip, I know you're new here, but if you want to work on my railway, you must learn to work safely and obey all the rules. If you're not prepared to be patient and learn how to do things properly, I'll have to keep you in the shed.
Philip had another run-in with Gordon, now fully establishing a big engine, little engine dynamic between them, just like Thomas had with Gordon.
He could go.
Oh!
Hello, big engine. I mean, Gordon.
Wake up, lazy bones! Why don't you work hard like me?
In the following episode, Philip to the rescue. Philip starts a dynamic with James. James then tries to show off by pulling too many trucks. Unfortunately, this leads to James crashing, but with the help of Philip, lessens the impact and makes the damage less severe. This mirrors James's first crash, in which Thomas helped him just like Philip.
Quickly! Get help!
See, James? I told you I was very strong.
Hurry, Thomas!
Emergency!
Judy, Jerome,
Emergency!
James is off the line!
Oh dear, don't hit me, don't hit me.
I hope this will teach you troublesome trucks a lesson.
Not only that, but in this episode, Edward comments on how Philip is similar to how Thomas was when he first came to Sodor, thus specifying that the other characters acknowledge Thomas has undergone a transformation.
That little box cab can be very cheeky sometimes.
Yes, reminds me of a little tank engine who wanted to see the world.
But why does this make Philip an important character? What makes his parallels with Thomas so significant? Well, it's not the fact that it makes Philip himself important, but what he represents. Philip's presence helps to present Thomas's growth as a character. As mentioned earlier, Philip was introduced in 2015, which was the 70th anniversary of the Thomas the Tank Engine franchise, making it very significant. The head writer of the show at the time was Andrew Brenner, a person who's shown to have deep love and understanding of the show. It's clear that Andrew tried to do something very smart that year for the character of Thomas. One of the movies released that year was called The Adventure Begins. This was the movie where Thomas's first stories were adapted from the original first few books. The movie's purpose was to establish how Thomas became the #1 engine we all know and love. The second movie that year was called Sodor's Legend of the Lost Treasure. In this movie, Thomas is tested and trialed, put down to his worst, and losing his reputation but coming out on top at the end. The purpose of this movie was for Thomas to prove his worth of the #1. The season released this year, 19, fills the gap with Thomas's arc between the movies, showing Thomas has grown and matured since his arrival. Andrew Brenner using Philip to develop into the new Thomas of the show, a young, inexperienced engine, to emphasize that Thomas himself is no longer that new engine, and he's now ready to become the mentor he once needed. Andrew Brenner really tried to make an effort with Philip. Despite the reboot ahead, Philip was still pushed as a character much later. In the last ever episode of the Andrew Brenner era of the show, called A Shed for Edward, Edward was written out of the main cast, now becoming solely a minor secondary character. This episode did something very questionable. Why did Edward leave to move into the shed with Philip of all characters? Now, this initially seems very random, but if we consider Philip still parallels Thomas, it actually makes perfect sense. Edward was the one who mentored Thomas in his early days. Him now leaving Thomas and mentoring Philip shows that Thomas doesn't need help anymore. The show started with Thomas, a cheeky, youthful, immature engine, and ended up with him all grown up. Edward now taking the next youthful, immature engine to mentor. Thomas finishing his journey, while Philip only starting his, making Philip one of the most important characters of the entire Thomas the Tank Engine franchise.